This morning, we have Judy Harrop with us, and I'm delighted that she said yes. I know she has a rich heritage. I'm looking forward to hear what she has to say.
Well, I've been nervous about this for months, so wish me luck.
Good luck.
First of all, I want to share about me. My story actually starts right here in Lamoni. Well, I was born in Leon, but my mother and I, well, my mother first, and then when I was born in November of 44. So if you do the arithmetic or the math, you'll know that I've got a real milestone birthday coming up soon. So my dad was in the service, and Mom was with him for a while, and then he was being transferred overseas, and she being pregnant with me, she came back to Lamoni to stay with her parents, Grace and G.N. Briggs. And I know I've shared some of this before with you, but her dad was G.N. Briggs, who was president of Graceland for 29 years. I think that's a record. It probably always will be a record. But we lived in that house until I was about a year old, until my dad came back. And for those of you who don't know, that's the house that Becky Shantz owns, that big pink house. It was always white, but it's now pink. When my dad got home, I was maybe a little bit over a year, and I'm not sure how long we did stay in Lamoni, but he needed to finish his degree. And so we moved to Des Moines, where he attended Drake University and studied to become a music teacher, which he did for the rest of his life. Our first move was to Stewart, Iowa, and I started kindergarten there. And that was also during the time when I got a baby sister, Karen. We're all 5 years apart, so I was 5 when Karen was born. We were there in Stewart, I think just 5 years, and then we moved to Indianola, where Dad continued his teaching of band and vocal music in the public schools. And that's where baby sister Mary Beth came when we lived in Indianola. We started attending the Des Moines Central branch. There was no branch of our church in Indianola at that time. And I was baptized at 8 years old. Shortly after that, my grandfather passed away, and my grandma Briggs came to live with us in Indianola for many years. We made another move, a big move, in 1959, following my freshman year in high school. My dad was a good golfer. He wanted to live in a place where he could play golf year round if he wanted to. And so a friend of his who he had gone to Graceland with had gone out there several years earlier, and he said, if you hear of any a job opening, because they were both music teachers, he said, if you hear of anything, let me know. And he did. So after Christmas of 1958, my dad and a teacher friend of his drove out to California. He had applied for the position of music director at Montclair High School. He did get the job. And so all that second semester of my freshman year, I knew that we were going to be moving. And in a way I was scared, but in a way I was excited as well. So we moved to California in the summer of 1959. And that summer I was blessed to be able to attend our church music camp at the reunion, or our church campgrounds. Have any of you been to Camp Buckhorn? It's beautiful. That was the first time we had ever been there, but I went to church music camp that summer, met people that I am still a few that I'm still connected with today. In fact, one of my roommates from Graceland, that's where we met, and we are still in communication today. The next summer, our family, all of us went back to Camp Buckhorn for a reunion, and I think that was probably where I first felt spiritually that Christ was working in our lives. So I was there in California just 3 years. I graduated from high school in 1962 and came back to Graceland to attend that fall. I knew pretty much always that I wanted to be a teacher. And so I majored in elementary education. I was in cadets, and that was a very fun memory, very fun activity. I have to tell a story about that. I was in cadets for 3 years, and then we got married. Rich and I got married, and he was going to be coaching at the high school. And I thought, well, I won't be able to go to cadets because we always practice at 6, and I'll have to be home fixing dinner and all that stuff. I could have been in cadets that year. I didn't realize that coaches didn't come home very early, right, Patty? So I always regret that 4th year of being in cadets, but it's okay. I survived. After, I still had 1 more year at Graceland to attend, and I was blessed to be able to do my student teaching at elementary school in Lamoni. We lived in a little tiny house right across from the playground. I think we paid $40 a month, and it was furnished. So that tells you how long ago that was. 2 weeks ago, we celebrated our 59th anniversary. So. We were in Lamoni for 12 years. He was coaching and teaching, and I eventually, after my graduation, was offered a teaching position. I was 4th grade self-contained classroom. I did a lot of different things during the 5 years that I taught in Lamoni, and Rich, it reminds me every once in a while that he was in some of my classes. I won't tell any stories. I don't remember them.
Yes, she does. You shouldn't lie.
Being kind.
You shouldn't lie in church.
Well, besides teaching, I don't know who it was that asked me, but evidently they knew that I'd been in cadets, and they asked me if I'd be interested in starting a high school girls drill team, which I said, yeah, I would. It was fun. And if I do say so myself, we were pretty good. I think we were the only school in the conference that had a drill team. And I've gotten several letters over the years of saying that that was one of their favorite memories of being in high school and being able to do that. And I, of course, patterned it after cadets. I do want to say that if you've seen the cadets out there now, they're more of a dance team. I could not have been in it then. We had done that. But we were a precision marching group, usually with pom-poms and that kind of thing. But it was fun. A lot of hard work, but it was fun. Well, in 1971, a Sunday afternoon, Rich was down at the high school open gym, and my phone rang, and the person said, "How would you like to adopt a baby boy? He's 2 days old." I was all by myself, and my gosh. I didn't have any idea when he'd be home. And of course, no cell phones then, and it was cold. It was early February. I wasn't going to walk down there and see if he was there. So I waited till he got home. We discussed it, not very long, and we decided to say yes. And so that's how we got our son, Kirk. 13 months later, I delivered a baby girl, Krista. I think that sometimes happens. We were in Lamoni, I think I said 12 years. And not that we were unhappy here, because we weren't, but Rich's mother and his brother were both in Ohio, and he kind of got the urge to coach out there. So he found out of a couple of opportunities. So we made a flying trip, driving, not flying, but it was a fast trip. He had interviews at both schools, got offered both jobs, and then we had to decide, well, do we really even want to move? Well, we decided that we would. And so the summer of 1977, we moved to Ohio, and he became the head basketball coach at Watkins Memorial High School. I didn't teach then because Krista was only 4, so I waited until she was in school, and then eventually I was offered a teaching job in that same district in the middle school. So I was teaching 6th grade classes there. During our 13 years in Ohio, we were very active in the Reynoldsburg congregation. He was pastor for several years. I was women's leader. It was a really small group that, yeah, everybody was active. Our kids were growing up during that time. And Reynoldsburg was just east of Columbus, so we were pretty close to Columbus. And yes, Pat, we were Ohio State fans. We still are.
I know.
Hmm. Over the years when we were in Ohio, Rich got approached a couple of times. Are you ready to come back to coach at Graceland? Well, he never really was. The time just wasn't quite right. And when our son Kurt came as a freshman, he was given the opportunity again to come, but it was like late in the summer, and he said, I can't go back to Ohio and tell him I'm leaving now. So he said, I could maybe come next year. And so they got an interim coach for the year. And we did move back to Lamoni then during the summer of 1990. The next part that I want to share with you, is really why I said yes to Marion. She kept asking and I kept telling her no, but then I thought, well, I really need to share this information. I have a very rich heritage in the church, some of which I didn't even know until about 4 years ago. I did know this. My dad's father, Arthur Baker, was a missionary. They lived in southern Missouri, about as far south in Missouri as you can be. Dad always remembered that his father was gone a lot and that they were very poor. So I don't know how he was able to attend Graceland, but he did, and that's where he and my mom met. When they first, I think I told this at my mom's funeral. They were at early in the year orientation meetings. Dad was sitting behind mom and he tapped her on the shoulder. He said, you seem to know a lot what's going on here. And she said, well, I've lived in Lamoni all my life and my dad's the president of Graceland. So fortunately that didn't scare him off. And eventually they started dating and married and the rest is history. My mom's mother, Grace Kelly, her father was T.C. Kelly, who was a 70, and he was raising his family in Independence, and that's where my grandpa met my grandmother. He had been, and I'm really not sure what job it was, but he was in the Philippines, and he was married and had three baby girls, and his wife died shortly after she delivered the twins. And so shortly after that, he came back to the States. And I think he was looking for a wife and a mother for his three babies. And that's where he met my grandma. And they married and they had 5 children of their own, plus the 3 daughters of his first wife. His oldest daughter, Dorothy, actually grew up and married Charles Sandage, and I think you'll probably recognize that name. He, the Charles Sandage School of Business at Graceland was my uncle. We called him Sandy. I didn't even know his name was Charles until a long time later. They had a son named Alan, and he grew up, he did not attend Graceland, but he grew up to be a very famous astronomer. And I have a book at home. It's a really big book about like that he gave my mom one time. And I don't know whether Graceland's library would like to have that. I need to check into that because that's a special book. I don't want it to become lost.
It's all the galaxies and the.
Yeah,
the-
very interesting.
He was at Mount Palomar, Mount Wilson. The director of that.
Yeah, anytime you want to come in here, you can.
You say Alan was the director of the Polymer Institute?
Yeah.
Yeah, the astronomer.
He
My
graduated
cousin
from
Alan.
Wow.
Miami of Ohio. That's where Charles was before he went to the University of Illinois as the head of the advertising department. at Champaign.
See, he knows more about my family than I do. Oh, okay, now this next part is what I did not know until I read a book that my sister Mary Beth found. Well, she didn't find it. Her husband Larry found it. And he said, you need to read this book. It's about your relatives. So she read it. She told me about it. And she said, you need to read it. And so Rich and I both read it. It's an autobiography written by Edmund C. Briggs. Come to find out, I don't know whether you would have heard of Edmund C. Briggs, but you would have heard of Jason W. Briggs. They are my great uncles.
My goodness.
They were my grandpa's uncles. And it was in their home, their mother's home, Polly Briggs, who would be my great-great-grandmother, where many of the meetings of the reorganization took place. So I have some very wonderful, famous relatives that I didn't know anything about, and I don't understand why. I don't know. Maybe my mom didn't know, but surely she did. We never knew until I read that book 3 or 4 years ago. So interesting. Okay. One of the questions had to do with spiritual experiences. I was very blessed to have been a part of a women's singing group called Ceaseless Praise. We were singing together for several years before we had a name, and then we finally named ourselves. You wouldn't believe some of the names that were thrown out. And we all agreed that we really liked the name Ceaseless Praise. What started out as a singing one song for a special music during a church service evolved into full services of prayer, testimony, music, and scriptures. And I want to read an insert. This came from our connections. That you weren't in it yet. Bonnie Atwood Orris was the accompanist then. But we had this picture taken on Rhonda Mickelson's front porch. But this kind of says who we were. I wanted to read it. We chose the title Connections as a way to express the experiences, changes, and bondings that have taken place as we have tried to minister to one another, to others, and to our Heavenly Father. We hope as you listen to this recording, you will also be able to make connections with the Lord and those around you. We were an active group for over 20 years. Did lots of fun, not only services, we traveled, not just in this group or in this congregation, but we traveled a lot of different places. We went several times to Nauvoo, Independence, Chicago. I miss it. I really miss it. It was a lot of hard work, but I don't regret any of it. We made, I think, 4 recordings. This was the 3rd one. There's one more, but I wanted to bring that one because it had what I wanted to read.
I guess we can't make it.
I have many special
Any
memories from
better.
singing with those women, and I also miss choir. Lots of hours spent in rehearsals, but I don't regret any of it and would not have traded those experiences for anything.
Can you understand that?
Barely, yeah.
Another question was trials in your life and how has faith made that easier? I wanted to share about 2 trials in my life, and I do think having a faith did make it easier, but it still was hard. My dad, at age 59, suffered a cardiac arrest after a parade where his band was marching.
I can
It was
hear
a bicentennial parade,
my computer
1976.
again.
And he was
Okay,
walking
you go
with
on and I'll just leave
former
it
band
like
members
that.
who told us, or told my mom later, that he kind of clutched his chest and just kind of went down, crumpled down. He was able to hold him so that he didn't injure himself in the fall, but it was a cardiac arrest. Paramedics rescue squad was right there, worked on him immediately, but he was taken to the hospital and was in a coma for almost 2 weeks. And we prayed that he would wake up and be okay. Well, he woke up, but he wasn't okay, and he was really never the same again. And that put my mom in a depression off and on for the rest of her life. She moved back here, I think it was 78, when she moved back here, and was a part of this congregation. And then our first grandchild, Aaron, was born 3 months early, weighed 2 pounds, 3 ounces, and you heard our requests for prayers many times for her. She's been through many health struggles, but I'll tell you what, she's a fighter and she always seems to come through with prayers and the good care that she's getting. She lived with my daughter and Krista and Mark for 12 years. And then after a very extensive back surgery, they suggested she go to Child Serve for rehabilitation. She never did walk, but she was getting to the size that it was difficult for Krista to lift, and Mark was a football coach and he was gone a lot, and they just didn't see how they were going to manage. So they were told about Child Serve, and she went in there, and somehow I just had it in my head that she probably would not ever come out, and she hasn't. But she's 24 years old now. We just keep loving her, and we have 2 FaceTime calls a week with her and visit in person as often as we can as well. I have a couple of things that I'd like to share. I was asked or invited and very honored to do that. My last 5th grade class at North Harrison asked me to be a speaker at their graduation. And that I was nervous for a couple of months too about, but I got through it. And I would like to share a couple of things that I shared with them in that talk. I thought I was just going to share some things. I didn't know that I was going to be the actual commencement speaker until I got there and saw the program, and then I thought,
Oh my goodness.
so anyway, but I think I did okay, didn't I, Rich? Well, anybody who knows me knows that I love books, and I'm always in the middle of one. And I push books and reading, of course, as a teacher. But I found a book that was appropriate, and I told them that don't worry, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. But, it was called A Gift of Time by Susan Florence. Now is the time to put aside the chatter of small things and to know that time is all we have. Now is the time to celebrate the small joys of each day. It may be time to dance. It may be time to remember. It may be time to forgive or time to forget. Yesterday is always with us, yet yesterday is always gone. Tomorrow rides on the horizon like a bird on the wing. Today can nourish us and inspire us. Treasure the moments. And I really like that. So I wanted to share that with them. And then the last thing, I want to end with one of my favorite quotes. I don't know who said it, but I love this. Life is not measured by the number of breaths that you take, but by the moments that take your breath away. And it's my prayer that we all will experience many of those special breathtaking moments in our lives. And don't ask me any more questions because I won't know the answers.
She told me not to, any of you can. That's right.
I may not know the answers, but you can ask.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite book? Gosh.
She reads all the time. So
I do
she's-
read a lot, and it makes mostly fiction. My sister Mary Beth told me that, oh, you have to read this book. She said, it's my favorite book of all time. So I did. And it was called Always a Stranger. And so I don't know whether it was my favorite, but I really enjoyed it.
Tell us about
Stranger.
Rich and how you met. and-
Oh.
Oh, we missed that
Kind of
story.
interesting.
Yeah, we missed that one.
I was a sophomore, he was a junior by the time we started dating. He asked me out early that year and I was already busy with another date. And so I said no. And he told me later, he said, well, she missed her chance. But he took another chance and he did ask me out. It was Thanksgiving. And back then, Graceland really didn't want us to leave for Thanksgiving vacation. In fact, we had classes on Friday, the day after. Can you imagine students today agreeing to that? They're being okay with that, but we did. So anyway, there was a movie. I guess we kind of ran into each other after dinner. They put on a nice meal, Thanksgiving, and we were kind of going out the door at the same time, and he asked me to the movie that night. There was going to be a movie at the Coliseum. I even remember the name of the movie, and I'll bet he doesn't.
Your chance. No.
No, it was Diamond Head. Diamond Head, that big volcano mountain type thing in Hawaii. But anyway, we went on that date and here we are 59 years later.
So how long, when you started dating, how long before you got married?
We got married after he graduated, and I still had another year, as I have said. So we dated for a year and a half. That summer after he graduated, much to his mother's chagrin, he had never met my family, and so he went to out to California to spend the summer out there with us, so that they could say, okay, you can marry our daughter or not, but they said yes. So he found a job at a gas station. I think probably learned a lot that summer.
Signal oil.
Tell them, well, you don't have the mic, but tell them about the time that you loaned some equipment to somebody, being so nice.
There were,
If we can hear, if you can give me the mic.
there was a man dressed in a suit with a little boy or little girl that came in to say, do you have a jack to, my car blew a tire down the road and I would need something to be able to repair that, but I don't have a jack. So looking at him in that nice suit and this little boy or little girl, I said, sure. So I went back and got the hydraulic jack, which is pretty expensive. I was trusting that that was all right, but we never saw that jack
Oh,
again.
no. Oops.
The balls were the owner. And that's church, what with the Van Fleets. They owned a lot of, they built a filling station or a gas station, and they would lease it. And when they leased it, they built another one. So before they were able to lease it, then I worked at those. So I worked 3 or 4 different ones because they leased that and I go someplace else. We had a good Texaco station right across the street who had a mechanic. And 2 or 3 times with my signal oil uniform on, I was pushing a car into the Texaco station across the street. Because I said, you don't want to be here, they can fix it. One other thing while I've got this,
Okay.
Judy's dad, because he was such a great person and a teacher that was well respected in that area, they have, it still is, the football field at Montclair High School is the Ben Baker Field.
Thank you.
And then with her grandpa, he was working for the Department of Education, setting up a school in the Philippines for the United States government. That's
That's
what
why
she
he was
said,
there.
what he was there.
But tell about your dad, about the field.
Well, my dad also, the Miller High School,
Yeah.
Miller High School football field is the Walter Harrop field. So both our dads has a football field named after them.
We have a plaque to prove it for each one.
Believe it.
What part of California? I don't know where.
Montclair is, have you heard of Ontario? Yeah, it's just right next door.
Warren County.
Yeah,
Orange County.
yeah, right next to Ontario.
Orange County.
Yeah. About 35 miles east of LA. We could get to the beach and over through the mountains and the canyons in about an hour's time. Nice area.
It's right in between. So you go from Montclair is in between Pomona and Ontario. So you just, on Holt Avenue, you just go from one.
So I don't, was it a big town? I mean, like, when you went.
No,
I know.
actually, no. It was actually really, Montclair was not much of a city. It was really a bedroom community. But it was the third school of the Chaffey Union High School District. Chaffey was the first one. And where Dad's friend who gave him the heads up to apply for the job at Montclair, Jack Mercer was his name. And he and his wife Jane were both Gracewell graduates. And he was the one that told Dad about the new school being built. And so that's what got us out there. Church connections. So,
He had been in Creston. Creston, Iowa, I think was
is that where he was
music.
from?
Yes, music.
So I know you sang. Did you do did you piano, other instruments?
I took piano at Simpson College when I was in 4th grade, but when we moved to, and I remember living through those recitals thinking, oh my gosh, I do not remember how this piece goes at all. But I'd walk up there to the piano and it would come, thank goodness. But I didn't take any lessons after we moved to California, so. And you don't play, if you don't use it, you lose it, so we still have a piano. He's the one that plays the piano more than me.
Not very well.
Well, he tries. Yes,
So I'm curious, Rich's version of your relationship of meeting you and why you asked her for a second date when you said you wouldn't.
he was the one that missed out. The first
Right on,
one.
right on. Sure.
I just, watching and being around her, I just wanted to get that second chance, even though I said she missed her chance. I did. I missed that. Her dad, she also mentioned, was the band director at Indianola, but he was also the golf coach. And one of our professional golfers from Iowa was
Steve Spray.
Steve Spray. So in the 50s, he was one of our better golfers in the United States. And that was one of his students and one of his golf people. That's why he wanted to get to someplace where he could play every day. Mount Baldy was right out their back door. When I left to go to work at the Signal Oil Station, you couldn't see anything but fog or smog. And when I came back at 6 o'clock at night, it looked like somebody had planted a mountain in the backyard. I mean, it was that close.
I don't remember that. I don't remember it being in the backyard. You go out the front and there's Mount Baldy up there.
Yeah, well.
That's not my
it's just
backyard.
Next, when I pull in,
Oh, okay.
yeah. The smog was really bad back in the early sixties. And came out of baseball game at Chavez Ravine, the Dodgers, and just talked to someone walking by and said, boy, it is a nice night. And he looked up and he said, yep, you can almost see the stars. But that was kind of sick.
Oh, geez, something else. Hold on. I don't think I shared this. I think I saw this in the Herald. It was telling about our church seal. And after the reorganization, these three men were on the committee to create that seal. Jason W. Briggs, my great uncle, Elijah Banta, and Joseph III.
Wow.
So very, very interesting. That was April 8th, 1874, Plano, Illinois. And Ceaseless Praise did go to Plano. Were you there? Yeah. Went to some historical places. I will never forget when we sang in the auditorium at the International Women's. What was it called? In the International Women's Conference, yeah. Oh my goodness, to walked out on that stage of the auditorium, and of course they were all the women were in their native dress, so forth. It was so beautiful. I know, it was breathtaking. Oh, and there's another memory of Ceaseless Praise where it was during a conference year and they asked us to come down and sing. And they put us on the porch of this one house, kind of across the street. And people would kind of come by and they would listen a little bit and they would go on. And it was real windy. It was not a very good situation. Interesting though. Yes.
Did Connections with Ceaseless Praise? Did
Yeah.
it go into Connections or what?
This was the name of our next to the last CD that we recorded.
Oh, the C-
Yeah. We did a cassette way back. That was our first one. And it had the picture of a bird on it. And I remember Rhonda Mickelson was the one that created that J card, the title. They don't call this a J card, I don't think, but cassettes they did. And it was a bird on it and it said Ceaseless Praise. And Rhonda told us at one point, she said, I'm so sick of that bird. Trying to get it just right. And then we did a Christmas tape, I believe. And then this one, Connections. And then the last one was Heartfelt. And we had the picture for that out in front of the Ames congregation where we had done a service. Yeah.
So how many of you are still left here with Ceaseless Praise?
How many years what?
How many people, how many singers are still here?
Oh,
from singing
gosh,
Ceaseless
Members.
Praise? Is it still a big group?
no.
Quite a few. Yeah. So
No, well, Benna, Easter. Several are in town, Pam, Sherman, Rhonda Mickelson, Marianne Manuel, me. But several of those were not in by the time we did the next CD. So members changed from time to time. Some moved away and some
Yeah, Karen's,
out.
Now, how did it start?
It was Pam Sherman who said,
Sherman,
she had the idea to invite a few ladies to sing just a song for church, for the ministry of music. And I think they'd been doing that 2 or 3 years before I moved. And before I moved here, and Karen said, well, my sister Judy is moving here and she's an alto. So I had a real in, whether they wanted me or not, I was in it. But yeah, people were in it and then they left for whatever reason, mainly moving away. But a lot of time and effort, right, Pat?
When did you give yourself the name Ceaseless Praise?
A couple of years after I came, and we moved back here in 1990. And I won't forget, there was some, I mean, I'm not gonna say what some of the suggestions were, but we were in Graceland, we were in the student center practicing for something, and we got sidetracked saying, we really need to give ourselves a name, and then people started throwing things out. And I don't know who it was that suggested ceaseless praise, but those two words are in one of the hymns. What was the hymn, Pam? Pat?
Now I'm curious about what the other names were.
I don't remember, but some of them were
One
pretty
of
crazy.
the words to the hymn is in our hymn book
Right.
right now. Take my moments and my
Yes.
days, let them flow. in
Ceaseless praise, yeah,
Yeah, and that's the name of that particular song is Ceaseless Praise.
right.
Judy didn't say that she was a flute player. She
Because
played
I'm not a
flute.
very good flute player. We had
Oh, that's
better
right.
flute players
Now,
than me.
flute. That's right.
That's what I took to music camp when I was out there in California. And we did band, maybe it was orchestra too, and singing, but that was really fun.
Indianola.
Well, I learned to play in Indianola, yes. My dad taught me. I mean, he was the band director, so he taught everybody to play their instruments. And I didn't play flute in college. I'm not sure why. I just didn't.
And when did you play? When were you a drummer?
Oh,
Oh, really?
I was a drummer my freshman year in high school. I was pretty short, as I still am pretty short, but anyway, littler then too. And one of the snare drummers, they lost one from graduation. And so Dad said, I'm short a snare drummer, Judy. My best friend was one of the snare drummers. He said, you and Sydney could just have a good time together. So I had to learn to play the cadences for that drum was heavy. That was just in marching band. I didn't play drums at all in concert band, just flute. Oh, as long as I'm talking about flute, I think probably the only time maybe that my dad was very disappointed in me, and I still regret it. Came home and he said, I got a new piece, and he said, I want you to play this. It was a flute solo. It's called Flute Fresco with band accompaniment. I do that? I do that? I'd be a nervous. And I wouldn't do it. And I said, let Jim do it. We were probably both about the same quality of flute players. But I said, let Jim do it. And he says, I don't want Jim to do it. I want you to do it. And he said, okay, we just won't do it. And I think he was really mad at me. And I think that's about the only time that I felt I disappointed my daddy.
I think you played at church.
I did one time.
Yeah,
I was the accompanist with Ceaseless Praise, but I'm not sure why I did it and Pat didn't, but I did. I'm blaming it on my flute, which is well over 50 years old. The pads are probably all dried out and I can't do it anymore. Another story I really highlighted my dad's career was his band was chosen to march in the Tournament of Roses parade when they were out there. We were here, we watched them on TV, and that was when my sister Karen was a senior. It was a 5-mile parade. And she said, when they practiced, they got out there and practiced so that they would be able to do it. You know, lengthening the time that they would do it, would march so that they could do the 5 miles on New Year's Day. But it was exciting.
So you were 10 years older than Mary Beth.
And 5 years older than Karen.
So how was it? How was it 3 girls growing up? Just what it was.
I was the big sister, Karen was the middle sister, and Mary Beth was the baby. I don't know.
And are you close now?
Yeah, we are. We are. We try to get together for sisters gatherings or get-togethers, and we seem like we're all retired now. Why in the world is it so hard to figure out a time to do it? But it's hard. We all have other things we're doing and grandkids, you know, at least activities for them. Should say something about, I mentioned Erin, our grandchild. She was our first one. We have Kirk's 2 boys, Brody and Riley. Riley is 18 and Brody is 22, I think. And,
Where are they?
they're in the Kansas City area. Actually, they live in Peculiar. I think that is the funniest name, Peculiar, Missouri. And our youngest grandchild is Macy, and she's a senior at Valley High School in Des Moines. I don't know how she got to be 18, but she is.
She's a football manager for,
They're
Valley High
They're-
School.
yeah. She's
This
done
is
it.
her
This is her
fourth
fourth year. She loves it. I don't know what she's gonna do next year. Of course, we've suggested Graceland with a lot of the or with many of the grandkids, and we haven't gotten one yet.
then we talked about Reed, just getting back from
Yes,
Saudi Arabia. That, that
Yeah.
celebration when he got back.
yeah, that was very
Yeah.
nice. That was a long 9 months, and he really hasn't sat down with us to share experiences over there. He has his mom and dad. I haven't pushed it. He shared with them that a lot of it was hard. He was the youngest one, and he kind of felt like he sort of got the brunt of it. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't an easy 9 months, I don't think.
So you've been retired for a while. Have you traveled? What have you?
We have taken several cruises. We always make at least an annual trip, sometimes more out to Ohio, especially now that Rich's brother lost his wife 2 years ago. Or he comes out here to visit us, but. We went to the beach. We went to, Rich and I went to the beach in August. Orange Beach. And it's a lot harder at age 79 than I remember it being. Just getting down into the water, there was kind of this big shelf, and I had to have him help me get down into it. And we saw a couple of jellyfish one day, and we said, "Oh, I'm out of here." We used to see jellyfish when we would go for weeks summer with his brother. They got to start going to Longboat Key, Florida, and that was a lot of fun.
Condos with McDowell's.
Yeah, oh yeah, the Branson condos with Patty and Stu and several other friends. Was a lot of work, wasn't it, Patty and Stu? But it was fun too. We don't have those anymore.
Good times too.
Yeah. Right. We ended up buying one condo and you know, the whole idea was to rent it, which we were able to do. But then we would all get to go down too, to spend time there. And then we bought another one that had a full-time renter in it. And then when that man decided that he was going to leave, he was older and he decided he was going to leave. We kind of started thinking then that maybe we ought to sell both of them. And we did, right before the pandemic started. Good timing. Would have been hard.
I've had a chance to spend some time with you, and I've been amazed about how many people were racing at the same time you were that live here in the Moonlight, that are friends of yours.
Like Jeannie. Jeannie and I were roommates for a semester, right? Patroness Hall. Yeah. And they moved back to Lamoni about the same time we did. 1990.
Rich was my house president.
Oh, really?
Is that right?
Rich
Rich was your
was
house
Jim's house president.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
Do you remember what years you were roommates in Patron?
It was our sophomore year.
What year?
Well, let's see. I graduated 60, 63.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cause I think I was there 61, 62
Okay.
in Patroness, and then I
Okay.
went to East Hall
Okay.
after that.
Okay. So 62, 63 would have been our freshman
Yeah.
year, right? So this.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
yeah,
I'm
we
a
would have
little
been
bit
Walker.
older than you. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then Patty was there too. at the same
I didn't know Patty
time?
then.
You didn't know?
No.
She was quiet and.
Well, and I don't know, no, I wasn't on campus much my senior year because,
What year? I came in 63.
okay, I should have known you because I graduated 66, but I don't know.
Well, she had so many campuses, she couldn't go out.
Stu said Patty had a lot of campuses, she didn't get to go out. For those of you who don't know what a campus is,
You know,
you had to follow the rules. You had to follow the rules and be in, women had to be in by a certain time. Men didn't have any rules, but you know what? We never even questioned that, did we?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, well, some of us did, yes. Those of us who had campuses.
I actually did coach in that.
It was just the way it was. But if you got so many late minutes, you had to serve as a campus. That means you had to be in by 7 o'clock on either a Friday or Saturday night. And you couldn't come out of your room until 7 the next morning or something like that. It's been a long
No,
time.
that's.
For 3 consecutive months.
I have the record, just FYI, so you all know, most campuses served at Grace.
I only
Wasn't
served
accident,
one.
I wasn't being bad.
And had nothing to do with.
They had nothing to do with it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, 20 late minutes. 20 late minutes got you a campus.
Yes.
Every 5 after that got you a campus.
That's true. It was sad.
So you could get, you
So
they
good.
stack
No
up
wonder
pretty
Patty
fast.
didn't like.
Yeah, they stuck up pretty
Well, the
fast.
theory was that if the women were in, the men would have anything to do, so they'd be in.
I
which is
suppose.
not true.
Would
That
not
was not correct either.
That was the theory. According to my dad.
Yes,
I
Stu.
I had a question.
go ahead.
What was, you mentioned the Briggs who was involved in the peace symbol. What was his name, his son's name, and down to you?
Jason.
Jason W.
Jason.
Briggs,
Jason W.
and he
Briggs.
was an uncle of my grandfather. That's
Your grandfather was
George N. Briggs, who Briggs Hall is named after.
President Grace.
just, I'm tracking where they are.
Yeah, you know,
Well, Jason W. is in Utah, I think. From what I just looked up.
I really don't know, and I guess I really didn't know much.
And your
family history.
grandfather is out at, Rosedale,
Yes.
Yeah,
and his name again is,
And so is Edmund.
George N.
yeah, I saw it in the,
G N
Yeah.
Briggs, they call him GN.
G.
so the only person out there that was involved in peace symbol would be Elijah Banton. But,
Okay,
of the three.
right.
Edmund, in that book, and the reason he wrote the book is the church history had already been done, and so he wrote the book to add to our church history for the autobiography instead of, he wasn't included because of that. And 2 or 3 different times in talking about what his day was like, that he walked 40 miles. And one of them was going by the park, Nine Eagles State Park, coming through to Lamoni. So he'd have to walk from one family where he's gonna stay to the next family. When he got to Council Bluffs, eventually Alma Blair's relatives, so Blair, said, you need to have a horse. And so he gave him a horse so that he could travel by horseback rather than just walk.
And those were days prior to the reorganization, and he was just trying to spread the gospel. And according to the book, it seemed like he was one of the very few, and maybe the only missionary at that time doing that, until Joseph III agreed to take over the leadership of the church.
Stu, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm intrigued with all the music ties, and I sort of felt a little bit of disconnect. Dad was in the service. All of a sudden he comes out of the service and he's going back to college, and the college is for music. And that seemed a little bit of a disconnect to me. Was the service just a detour
Well,
in his life, or what was the connection to the music side?
I don't know.
He was a baseball player at Graceland. And then during the war, then they stopped the baseball program and didn't pick that up till I was a junior at Graceland.
He was a very good singer. I guess that's kind of where he and my mom met at a cappella. They called it a cappella choir. And so they were in that together. Somehow he learned how to play every instrument there was, and that's just what he wanted to do, was to be a music teacher. As far
So
as I
the
know.
service really was just kind of a detour in life.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So
Right.
now, most of his music, as you describe it, it was in a sense, not religious, not
No,
church
school,
oriented, but most
but-
of yours is.
Yeah. Well-
What makes for that?
I don't know, but here's a funny story too. Dad was a very good singer. He did a lot of solo work. And when we lived in Stewart, he was the choir director there as well. He was the choir director at Central in Des Moines too. But he would sing solos, and it was at Easter time, and he was singing Open the Gates of the Temple. And of course, he had been practicing at home. And as young and innocent as I was, I started singing right along with him. And my mom had to really shush me up, but not, after too long, but she didn't let me sing for too long, but embarrassing, I guess, but
What's amazing about our brains and how they work. After he had his heart attack and was not right, he would still, wander around places. We'd go out to play golf, and I knew how good a golfer he was, but he'd swing and hit behind the ball just a little bit, and it just infuriated him. And he'd just get upset about that. When he was at the nursing home, he'd be sitting there with his hands closed up, and I'd be talking to him about things, and somebody'd say, "Ben, can you sing for us?" And he'd get up and go to where the piano and they play, and his voice was exactly the same. Beautiful, could go through all that same beautiful voice and sing 4 or 5 hymns and then come back and sit down, but that never left him.
How long did he live after he had cardiac arrest?
he died in 86, so 10 years. And they were hard years because it really was hard. Not only what it was doing, his situation, but it affected my mom's life a lot too.
So I know Karen is music as well. Is your youngest sister
Maybe.
also?
Not as much. No, she sings, but she's never been really in singing groups. And we all played an instrument. Karen and Mary Beth played clarinet, and I played flute.
So where do they live? Karen and Mary Beth, where are they living now?
Oh, Karen lives in Blue Springs. She and her husband Larry attend, oh geez, what's it called?
Chapel?
Woods Chapel.
Which,
Yeah. I haven't been there for a long time. And Mary Beth is actually going to church by way of Beyond the Walls. And she's the one who just recently lost her husband.
who was a minister.
Who
Hospital.
who was a minister at the hospital, yeah.
So where's that at? Where is it?
She lives in Polk City.
In Polk City,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah,
Uh,
so about an hour and 20 minutes. from
sure.
Dr. Benson, Roy Benson, was a good friend of Dad's with Ben, and would go visiting at the nursing home, and he couldn't wait to tell me. He said, I went to visit him, and I said, Ben, you know who I am, don't you? Yeah, he says, you're my best majorette. And he just laughed about that, how we could do that, but he could read everything in the newspaper. I'd give him the newspaper, he could read every word, pronounce every word, and I'd say, so what took place? No clue.
Yeah.
I mean, he could still do certain
Could read, but he
things,
couldn't
and he couldn't read, didn't know what he was doing, but
We've got time for
Great.
one last question. Anybody got one last question? It's 10:30, so we probably need to wrap it up.
How many years did you teach?
33.
33, wow, wow. And mostly in
Well,
elementary,
all elementary.
All elementary.
I did student teaching in 2nd grade, and then I taught,
Kathy Randy,
what?
who was that was Krista's, Kathy Randy.
I was gonna say, what? No, she's a teacher, 2nd grade.
I taught 4th grade self-contained first at Lamoni, and then I did lots of different things. Moved upstairs and taught half the 5th grade subjects with Mrs. Leonard. I think the first year I moved upstairs, I was 4th, 5th, and 6th grade language arts.
Back to the 6th.
Time's up.
Yeah.
You're done.
Your supervising teacher
Um,
was Kirk's
no,
kindergarten teacher.
no. Kirk's kindergarten teacher was Wilberta.
Well,
Yeah.
Neil. Yep.
Yeah,
It's Neil.
she wasn't. I can't remember my supervising teacher's name.
Had a big impression. apparently.
What?
It didn't either.
Was Harold Foster?
Huh?
Was it Harold?
No.
No.
Claudia Chandler, is it still on?
No.
No. Claudia Chandler did student teaching the first semester with this teacher. Mrs. Rhodes is who it
Oh,
was,
Mrs.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Mhm.
Claudia was in first semester and then I was in second semester. And that was second grade. And then, as I said, I taught fourth grade self-contained and then lots of different arrangements, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. And then when we moved to Ohio, I taught sixth grade classes in the middle school. And then when we came back here, taught at Grand Valley, kind of the same thing, fourth, third, fifth. And then my last 13 years at Eagleville at North Harrison, I was in fifth grade.
33 years.
33.
33. 33.
Well, thank you for listening to my life.
Oh, my gosh, thank you for sharing.